Happy Half Hour. I'm Joseph Mojo McCarthy. With here with Steve Hayes, our producer, Austin Mary, and the founder and the producer and the creator of the brainchild behind Chat Wilson. Happy is what you say. So, welcome to the Happy Half Hour. Welcome to the Happy Half Hour. Yeah.
What is going on, Joe?
What's up, Steve Hayes? What's going on? Welcome to another episode of Happy Half Hour. I'm so glad you're here because you're the other half of me. So we got two half-wits making a whole wit right here. But
wow, that's amazing.
I don't even know what a wit
you ever
is.
seen a whole wit? I have no wit. I don't know. I can't believe that there's a word that Mojo, the wordsmith, actually said he didn't know what it is. You must be jesting, Joe.
I'm a court jester is what I'm doing. I'm jousting.
You are a court jester. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. You're a court jester. I like that term for you because that's really what you are. You work at a...
you could say I work at a university.
Can I say where you work? Yeah, that's what I was going to do. You work at a university, so you're around the King's Court all the time, and yet you're always... Everywhere you go, Joe, you bring laughter, you bring joy to the royalty, actually. And so you are kind of like a court jester, but you're also a polymath. Can you explain what that is a little bit?
Yeah, if only I knew what that meant. No, so when I was a kid, Steve-O, they used to say, "Jack of all trades, master of none," and I was like, "Why?" And of course, that was my favorite question as a kid. Anyway, why? Why can't I be a Joe of all trades and master of some? Which is actually what I've become. And thankfully, over the years, there's a word for that. It's called polymath, which just basically means expertise in more than two unrelated fields. And because I've gone deep in music and graphic design and writing and speaking, et cetera, I officially qualify for polymath. Not that I'm bragging about the word. I just like the fact that it doesn't say I'm master of none. I can actually be master of several, actually, and I think we all can. So that's really.
Yeah, I like that because I think when that term comes out and people use that term, it's usually to point out the fact that you are not the master of all of them. Right, you can be the master of one, but you can't be master. It kind of does come across as a negative terminology, and so I like how you flipped it to a positive one.
When I was a kid, people would say, "Hey, Joey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was ready. I was like, "I want to be an astronaut. I'm going to be an NFL football quarterback. I'm going to be the president of the United States. I'm going to be an Olympic athlete. I'm going to write a novel." I mean, I had all these things, and then the adults, of course, would say, "Oh, that's so cute, but which one?" And I would say, "What do you mean? Well, which one do you want to be?" I said, "I told you all the ones I want to be." And they said, "Well, you have to pick one." And I would say, of course, "Who says?
Yeah.
Why? Why do I have to pick one?" And I think I didn't even know then, but you look back over history, and if you look at Benjamin Franklin or you look at Mozart, you look at people in history who they were masters of many, many different fields.
Yeah.
And I think we limit ourselves and we limit each other by saying, "Oh no, you have to pick one." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Why?
We do
Who
that.
says?
We do.
Why? 100%. Why do we have to do that?"
Yeah, I think times are changing, but we tend to do that, and we tend to make people grow up faster than they need to grow up, right? And a lot of people would probably balk at that and say, "Well, what do you mean people with this generation these days, they need to learn how to respect them. They need to learn like every one of us did at that age, But a lot of it was to get serious and stop, stop being a kid. Don't let them see you sweat. Never let them see you cry. Don't you, I'll instead of just play." And, I was talking to someone yesterday about how his kid, and he was like, "Man, I wish my kid worked more." But with my kids, while they're in still high school, I was like, they're going to be working the rest of their lives. And I know parents say they're 16, they better be working, they better be whatever. But you know what? They're going to be working the rest of our lives. And we tell kids to grow up instead of, and you've talked about this before about childlike versus childish.
Yes.
And childish is childlike is healthy. Now, childish is like, we need to grow up and become a little bit more responsible. But man, we stop dreaming. We stop, imagination is huge. Where would we be without imagination? We wouldn't have any of the luxuries that we have today. We wouldn't have the phones that we're doing this on, the computers. We wouldn't even have that if someone didn't imagine. And so thank God that there's always people that say, "You're not going to put me in a box. I'm going to remain dreaming. I'm going to continue to imagine." And good things come out of imagination. Imagination is also another way to handle when difficult times come. It's how a lot of us can cope with, at least when we were younger, could cope with all the difficult stuff that happened.
That's right. You might say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one.
Mm.
Right?
That would be a
The
good
postal
song. You should
plays.
write that.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yes. Yeah, but my acronym for those who haven't heard is PLAY, PLAY, pretend. That's unleashing that unlimited imagination, because who said that when you grew up you had to grow old? Or who said when
Right.
you grew old you had to
What does
grow
that
up?
mean?
I mean,
Old means you can't be fun, have fun. I mean, seriously. Yeah.
come on, yeah. And you often say, Steve, and I love this in your Happy Life podcasting, you say that your happy
Yeah.
self is your best self. I couldn't agree more. I think I experience that as well. That my happy self is my best self, but my happy self is when my childlikeness comes
Yeah.
out to play.
Say that again,
I'm
Joe. I
happy when
love that
I'm at
definition.
play. Yes. So if my happy self is my best self is my childlikeness that wants
Yeah.
to play. And in fact, but here's what gets lost often in this conversation that we're talking about right now, Steve, is that science is discovering that play is where children learn the most. Come
Right.
on!
Right.
Play is
Right.
where children learn the most. In fact, I've heard it now said that play is the most important thing. It's play is the work of a child.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like work. And I'm like, if oh man, why do we lose that? Because unfortunately, so many of my peers, Steve, and you know many of them. We grew up with the same peers. They do what they have to do
Right.
during the day, so that then they can be free to do what they want to do at night or on the weekends. And I'm like, who says that's the way it has to be? So I'm all
Yeah.
about, and I think I go overboard at times because I'm like trying to start something,
Right.
start an epidemic here. But I bring my playfulness into the room, and people don't know what to do that oftentimes, and they like, oh Joe, settle down, turn it down, grow up, play small, whatever
My
it
whole
is.
life I've heard
Yeah,
that. My
yeah, you and
whole
I
life
both.
I've heard
Right?
that.
That's why we're kindred spirits, of course. But just because it's not the status quo doesn't mean it shouldn't be the best part of us, right? Because I think I'll end with this before I hear from you. Is that Bertrand Russell, a great philosopher? He says, "Don't be afraid of being eccentric, because what was once eccentric has now become status
Is
quo."
now.
Right?
Yes,
It
I
takes
love
it
that
takes
quote.
eccentric
Yep.
people to see, and you're one of these people, Steve, to see the future before it arrives, and everybody else can't see it, so they think you're nuts. And then because you bring that into the collective consciousness, well, then suddenly that over time becomes the status quo, and people are like, "Oh yeah, I knew that all along." You're like, no, you didn't. The Stevens of the world.
Yeah. Right. We tried telling you, but you didn't want to
Yeah,
listen,
because it
right?
was
And even if people like that are off a little bit, at least gets us in that direction, or we start moving in that direction
right.
where we find out. Because I mean, brainstorming, that's what brainstorming does, and it's one thing that we stopped doing. We stopped brainstorming. It gets us to the answer, and a lot of stupid ideas gets us to
Yes, that's right.
a good idea. So yeah, my whole life, I mean, I like that whole term of court gesture. That's kind of what I am too. I like to bring play. I mean, think about it. Our work, the things that we do that we don't like doing, if we brought play to it, that doesn't mean that we can always goof around when it's serious time, but we can find fun ways to do the job that we have to do, or ways to lift our spirit or lift other people's spirit. And when you bring the play into life, that's why I love the fact that you have that acronym play, because when you bring the play into life, it makes life more enjoyable. That's why play
Yes.
is there, for that purpose. In my opinion, play is very important. As an adults, we don't know how to do that anymore, so we just spend more money to play. We buy new cars. That's our way of playing. But because we forgot how to, you don't have to buy a new car to feel better. You don't have to buy a new golf club you can still enjoy golf with your old golf clubs. But when we remove the imagination, when we remove the childlikeness from our life, because we have to quote unquote grow up, which I don't think that's what
Right,
grow up
right.
means. When we remove, I think it just means taking responsibility for when we
Ooh.
make mistakes, right? But when we remove that from our life and we remove the play, we remove the fun. And the fun is what helps us do what we do, helps us. It's the spoonful of sugar, right? That doesn't just make the medicine go down, but makes
Yeah.
all the stuff, you know, go down. Speaking of play, I
Let's
came
go.
across a joke. I want to tell it to you. Okay.
Oh,
So
bring it.
this governor was in this parade, big parade, and his wife and he were on the back of this convertible, and they're waving at the crowd. They're going, and somewhere through the parade, the governor sees one of his wife's ex-boyfriends, who now works at a gas station. So while he's waving at everybody, he kind of says under his breath, he whispers into her ear and he says, "Aren't you glad you married me? Because now you're the wife of a governor. If you would have married him, you would have been the wife of a gas station worker." And to which she kept waving and whispered back in his ear, she said, "No, if I would have married him, he'd be the governor."
Yes,
It's funny too,
touche.
because I spent the last week playing. I went and helped these people at the bus barn. They were throwing a party for all the bus drivers. I went down there and gave them free coffee. I emceed a parade. My buddy and I made a whole city laugh. We lifted the spirits of an entire city. I guarantee you, we probably not going to be invited back because we weren't your typical parade people. You ever know, the parade's supposed to be fun and everyone's like that Capital One commercial, so boring and stuck up or just they're very polite. And well, tell you what, dude, those mics were set up an hour before the parade and we didn't care. We're just talking to the mics and no one is even there. And we're cracking ourselves up. And then I came back and my brother-in-law, I helped him with his house. I helped him paint his house, huge house. And all these years he hasn't put his back patio in. So he was going to put pavers in. So I went and helped him. And those pavers were heavy. I mean, some of those pavers were 80 pounds a piece. So I was going to go up there for a few hours. I was going to go up there and then it ended up turning into 2 days. And I came home so tired, but it was like the parade. The same thing happened when I did the thing for the bus drivers. I was depleted because when you give away encouragement, we've talked about this before, right? You're giving your encouragement to someone else. So you deplete your encouragement. Now it does end up feeding you, but when I was encouraging at the bus barn, when I was making people laugh at the parade, when I was helping my buddy, my brother-in-law with his pavers in the backyard, I gave out a lot of energy, and it was good energy. And even though I was depleted, Joe, I felt so full. I just felt full. And I knew I had to replenish myself back. And I'm still in that process now. But the thing I liked about that, so I was coming home from all that. And I was driving home after it was late at night. We went till late every night until the neighbors couldn't handle the cutting of the saw and all that stuff. So I come home and I'm just like, I'm not going to be able to do a podcast. By the way, our podcast is Happy Life Studios, or you can go to happylife.studio. You can find our podcast. And we put out stuff like this every week. But some weeks I just don't get it done. This week I had so much fun pouring my life into people. I'm like, if I don't get a podcast, I don't get one done. It's okay, So I'm coming home and then I hear that joke on Sirius XM. And immediately I was like, that's what I want to talk about. But before I tell you my take on it, I want to ask you, Joe, if you had a take on that joke at all.
So the joke about the wife and the governor, right? Yeah. Well,
the governor.
I just kind of wish you'd have married me because then I could be the governor.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's why.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's hilarious on a lot of fronts. But what struck me, Steve-O, when you're telling that joke is actually not all that funny. It's actually quite serious. And that is that each one of us experience the world through our own eyes. This is kind of a good rollout of what you're talking about, is that oftentimes whatever I'm experiencing, I'm seeing it, well, always I'm seeing it from my vantage point, from inside my head, which nobody else is there. I could try to bring them in through my words.
You got a lot of voices in there, just not a lot of people. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. A lot of voices, not a lot of people, that's a whole nother topic, by the way. But the point I'm making is that oftentimes I find that the world tries so hard to get everybody else to see what they're seeing. And in fact, if they don't see what they're seeing, then they write them off, or worse, they become an enemy, right? You're in my camp. Either you agree with me because you see what I'm seeing, or you don't. And so then you're them. You're not one of us. And it was very interesting, that the lady in the joke says, "Oh no, that's your perception. My perception is quite different." And it's a funny punchline. But the point I'm trying to get to is that wouldn't the world be a better place? Here's my question to you, Steve. Wouldn't the world be a better place if we could say very honestly to ourselves and to others, you can't see what I'm seeing. I'm going to offer it to you as best I can, but I want you to understand you don't have to see or agree with everything that I'm seeing or saying to be my friend. In fact, I want to know what you have to share, because I love this word fascinating. And I find it that conversations that our relationships can be fascinating. In fact, I break the word, as you know, as I love to do, facetnating. Fascinating to me is facetnating, like on a diamond. A diamond's got all these facets, and each one
Mm,
of them is its own prism. And as you're looking at it, you're looking at it from your own angle, and you see something that I can't see because I'm not there.
I
I'm
like
over
it.
on this other side. I'm looking at a different facet. But I'm willing to share and to believe that even though I don't see what you're seeing is real because you're seeing it from your vantage point. And I know you, I trust you, and I love you. So how do I reconcile? Well, that's not what I'm seeing. Well, it's not because it's not an either or. It's a both and. And so I'm gonna leave you with this, Steve, and I wanted to get your take on this. If you and I were standing in the same room, face to face, just a couple feet apart, and there was a clock between us, and the clock face was transparent, so you could see the hands, you could see the numbers, but the clock face was transparent, and you're standing facing me, and I'm looking at the clock, and I would say, Steve-O, the clock is going clockwise. I can see the hand going around.
And I'd be like, "No, your clock is broken. It's not working correctly.
Yeah.
It's going the
You'd
wrong
say,
way."
yeah, you say
Only
it's
because
going
of my perception,
counterclockwise.
where I'm watching it from, right?
It's your vantage point. Yes. Yes, we're both looking at the exact same thing
Yeah,
in the same
yeah.
room, 2 feet apart. And I would fight to the tooth and nail to say, Steve, you're wrong. It's going counterclockwise. And you say, Joe, you're out of your mind. It's going clockwise.
Because from your perspective, I am wrong, and
That's
you're
right.
right in that.
Yes.
You are right. I am wrong.
And
But
we're
from my
both,
perspective, I'm like, "But Joe,
yes,
no, you're
exactly.
wrong." And from my perspective, you are wrong, right? You can always prove somebody wrong, and we spend a lot of time and energy trying to do that, but I like the whole it reminds me of the quote from, oh, was it Covey? Who was it that said, "Seek first to
Yeah.
understand, then be understood." But we want
Well,
people to
St.
see
Francis.
things from what's that? Go ahead. You said you
I was
probably.
actually St. Francis of Assisi way back before Stephen Covey ever quoted it.
Oh, really?
Seek first to
I did not
understand,
know that.
then
Yeah.
to be
And
understood.
so,
Yes.
what makes a diamond so beautiful, and what I hear you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, though, all of our viewpoints, all of our lives, they have these different angles, these different viewpoints. That's what makes the light shine off the diamond, which I imagine what makes the diamond so valuable, is when the light shines off it from all these different perspectives, and it creates this whole other. I mean, I love that concept. In fact, that's really what the democracy was built upon. I was talking about this
Right.
today at the coffee shop I was writing my book. I was talking to the young lady, and she brought it up, not even me. And so I love how someone younger is feeling this
Mhm.
way. But I said, man, if we're only conservative all the time, then we never come up with indoor plumbing. We never come up with electricity because we're conservative. We're always playing the safe role. If we're always liberal, we end up going so far, and we need the people to pull us back to be there when we try something and I fail because I shot big, but there's someone there to help hold me. When those two go together, that's when we fire off each other. When you lean too far one way, whether it's the right or the left, falling is falling. Oh, Joe, no, the other way. Lean the other way. No, Joe, lean right. What's the difference whether you fall to the right or fall to the left? It's still a fall. So who cares, right? And I just think that I agree with you. But the thing I got out of that joke was I loved that lady's confidence because
Yes.
we're
Yes.
told, whatever world you're in other words, sell yourself short. If you would have married him, you just would have been a gas. Well, what? That's no. She says, no. What are you talking about?
Right.
Like, in other words, she sees her role in her husband's
Yes.
life. He is
Yes.
saying, in my opinion, she's saying, you didn't get to this governor on your own. I got you here, and I'm married to a woman that I am who I am. I guess I'm blaming her, but I am who I am because she's an amazing human being. I love that mentality. Yoko Ono said it. I said it, but then I came across Yoko Ono said the same thing, and I hadn't even realized it. But Yoko Ono said, "You change the world by being yourself." And I think if we focus on
Ooh.
making people governors, to me, that's exactly what you were just saying, Joe, when you were saying get the other person's perspective, get their side of the story. Stop trying to get them to view your side of the story. When we begin to focus on making somebody else governor, and what does it mean to govern? It just simply means to rule well. When you rule well, everything works. When you got good leadership, everything works. Well, what about governing your life? What about governing your attitude? And I do a better job of governing my life when I have people like Joe, people like you in my life, because you've helped me govern my life. And I think if we focused on making governors, I think not only would our world be way better, but I think the entire world would be a lot better.
Well, let me riff on that just a little bit because I've studied leadership now for years. That was my graduate degree at Pepperdine. And I found out that the most effective form of leadership is servant leadership. So a lot of people think becoming the governor means I have all the power. Yeah, you have all the power to
Right.
serve the people that you represent. And quite honestly, the old command and control style that has been handed down to us because of military type of leadership.
And even goes beyond that. It goes to when we came over from England to settle in America, right? We brought the royalty model
Yes,
with us, which is
monarch.
there's
Right,
one family, they tell everyone else what to do, right? Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. So let's go back to maybe a different model. Let's go back to Jesus. Jesus himself, uh, he's the one who modeled as much as and said with his own words and with his actions that the best way to become the greatest is to become the least, which is a paradox.
Wow.
The greatest among you is the one who's the willing to
Wow.
do what nobody else will do, who is willing to serve without taking any credit. And that goes against everything in me that wants to be the governor. Look at me, I'm the governor.
Uh-huh.
When it turns
Hello,
out,
governor. Right,
the governor
exactly.
is a public servant. The design of the government is to help the people so that they won't harm themselves and they won't harm each other. So it's amazing how leadership has been flipped on its head. But I think the models are out there for us to see that the best. So Mother Teresa, as you know, I got to meet Mother Teresa back in 1990. She had zero power. She had no influence in terms of status. She had no money. She had took a vow of poverty, and she became one of the most influential people in history by doing one thing: by finding those who had no status and telling them, you're worth love. You're worth love. That God loves you. I love you. You are worth being loved. That's that's servant leadership. And as a result, became one of the most influential people in history. And so it's just amazing to me how we get it backwards all the time. But we only have a few minutes left. But I wanted to throw in this illustration. I think really hammers home what we're talking about here. And some of you will be familiar with this. And every time I hear it, it hits me a little bit differently. But there's this parable about the blind man and the elephant. And apparently there's this village somewhere that they never had elephants before. And an elephant gets brought into the village, and they positioned these blind guys all around the elephant. And they said, we want you to describe what an elephant is. And they had no idea. They had no experience what an elephant is. So the blind guy that's at the leg, he's like touching. He says, an elephant is it's like a tree. And then there was a guy over like touching the ear of the elephant. He says, no, 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 no. An elephant's like a fan. And another guy was down at the tail said, no, an elephant's like a whip. And the guy at the trunk says, no, an elephant's like a snake. And they all had a different perspective what an elephant was like based on their limited
Yes.
experience, right? And the truth is they were all
Yeah.
right, but they were only
Right.
right to a degree. Now, the parable goes on to say the blind men could have all fought over the fact that they were right because they had direct experience, and they're going to say, no, it's my way, or you're crazy, right? Or they could say, all right, I didn't experience, apparently, I didn't experience all of the elephant. I only experienced a sliver of it. Tell me more about what you experienced, and you, and you, and you. And if we could put the picture together about what everybody experienced, perhaps we'll get a clearer picture of reality. And I'm like, oh my gosh, let's do that, Steve.
Right.
Let's do
Right.
that.
And so we were doing an assembly company that I work for, do school assemblies with. It wasn't me, but it was my buddy, and he got done with his assembly, his anti-drug, anti-bullying assembly. And this kid comes up to him and says, hey, man, I really appreciated what you had to say, but I'm still going to smoke pot. And he could have gotten all offended, offensive about it, and like tell her how stupid that is, or tell him how
Right.
dumb that is. And he could have went off on it, but he didn't. Instead, he did this. And I think that so it fits in hand in glove with what we're talking about today. Instead, he sat down, he says, okay, tell me why. Tell me
Hmm.
what's a day look like to you? And he said when he was done listening to them, like a half hour later, it was, I get it. I mean, who am I to tell this person what
Right.
to when we seek to understand? So you think the elephant's like a snake? Tell me about that, right? And if an elephant was only
Yeah.
one of
Yeah.
those and that person was right, boy, we miss out. If the elephant was only a tail, if it was only a trunk, if it was only a leg, boy, do we miss out. I think we're missing out a lot in
Yes.
life because we're saying life is only this. It's only my perspective.
Right.
And I think we need to be out there making governors. I think we need to be out there finding out how we can help somebody else with their life, how we can help somebody else govern their life, how we can help them feel better about their life and take the skill set that you have. I mean, Joe, you and I both talked a lot about, how the number one fear of people is public speaking. Well, not for you and I. We're court jesters. Give us a stage. We don't even need a microphone. Like that, we have those microphones in an entire city and right at the main drag, and we're just talking, and we're probably driving the neighbors nuts, right? But we didn't care because that's what we do. And I think the point is to take our skill set, to take the part of the elephant that
Yeah.
we know, and then line it up with the other part of the elephant. Because no matter how smart we are, when you look at from the existence, beginning of since humans have been around, right? We're just a speck of sand in the entire beach. So for that speck of sand to rise up and say, "Hey, look at me, I'm bigger than that speck of sand," really? So, I mean, when you talk about the eons of time, what do we really know? Man, we're just we know the trunk, we know the leg, right? We just know a part of the whole picture.
Yeah.
And when we start,
Yes.
tell me what life is from your angle. Tell me how you see this
Yeah.
thing. You don't have to agree with them, but at least listen to them. And I think when we listen to them, we see them as more than just an opinion or a party or whatever the case may be. We see them as a human being. And when we start seeing people as human beings again, that's the first step into helping them govern their lives better, help turning people into governors.
I love that. That's so good. A governor also, I learned from my father, who was a mechanic. A governor is a piece of a mechanical stuff, and I'm not mechanical, so I can't be too technical here. But it keeps something from speeding up too fast. It governs the accelerator so that it won't blow itself up, right?
Yeah.
And I think, boy, I need that because if without the governor,
Yeah.
I can go off. I can go off at any given time, and especially when I'm defending my opinion,
Yeah.
what I know. So, Steve, one of the things I've said to you and I've said to people on my podcasts in the past is that I think one of the most dangerous two-word phrases in the English language is "I know."
I know.
I
I
know.
know, Joe. I know you think that.
I
I know.
know, right? Because I know just by definition cuts me off from any and every other possibility.
At that point, I'm saying I'm the beach. I'm no longer this grain of sand. I'm the beach. Because I'm a grain of sand. I know the whole
Yeah,
beach.
like I'm
No,
like
we don't.
I
Yeah.
that's why I say I'm not the answer guy. I'm the question guy. And so here's what I want to leave with our listeners is remember that in the word question is built into it quest. Question is a quest. It takes us on a journey of discovery and exploration. And so rather than making statements, here's what I'm telling myself as much as I'm telling anybody else. Rather than making statements and conclusions, which is an end, a conclusion is an end. I don't want to reach the end. I want to open up the doors. How do you do that? With questions. Questions are tapping into my curiosity, and curiosity suspends judgment. Judgment says, I know. Well, what if I'm wrong?
Right. What if
So
I
it's
am
quite
wrong? What
possible.
if it isn't? I'm
What if I don't have all the information?
kind
What
of
if
right. But yeah. What if I'm just on the other side of the clock? I mean, yeah.
exactly right?
Yeah.
What if you're seeing something that I can't see because I'm in my own head, but maybe we're both right. Maybe it's not an either or. Maybe it's a both and it's just a different way to
What
look at
if?
the same
I
thing.
love it.
What if? Right? That's a great question. What if? All right, we're down to just 3 minutes, so I'm going to jump onto a song. Steve, leave the audience with one practical step. What one thing you suggest, a recommendation that someone that can help them on this journey of exploration and becoming a governor of their own lives and helping others as well.
It's good to want to improve yourself. It's good to try to make yourself happy. Good to try to make yourself more peaceful. Takes a lot of work. It's healthy. It's good, but there's an easier way. When I make somebody else the governor, then I feel better about my life and I govern my life better. When I make somebody else happy, if it would be easy for me to try to make Joe happy. I know what Joe likes. I buy him something. I send him a cool, encouraging note. Joe, we do that back and forth with each other a lot through texting. I can make him happy, and that's easy. And once I make him happy, I
Yeah.
become happy, right? When I try to encourage somebody, I feel more encouraged because I encourage them. But to try to make myself happy, Joe, sometimes what would have made me happy yesterday didn't make me happy today, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I have no
Yeah.
clue how to make myself more peaceful, but I know how to make someone else more peaceful. And so if we can focus on number one, your life is important, right? Your life brings value. So don't think that your life is, if you married that person, so to speak, you would just be that person's spouse versus no. If I married, and I'm talking about friendship here, I'm talking about when I'm up against somebody else, instead of just letting life happen, whatever. No, the life is different. The world is different because you are there.
Yeah.
So you change the world by being yourself. So be your genuine self and help make other people govern better. That would be my word.
Love that. Yeah, and I would say um, my suggestion to myself, and for those who want to pick it up, is that whatever I think I know, realize that's just such a tiny sliver of reality. If I want to know more, if I want to be open, then to anybody else's opinion, I don't have to change my own. I can just add it to it and say, okay, you see the world from a different perspective. And I want to say that we're both seeing the clock. You're just seeing it from a different angle.
Yeah.
So you say counterclockwise, I say clockwise. That doesn't mean we have to be enemies.
Yeah.
We can actually say, guess what? Maybe we're
Yeah.
both right. So I'm going to end with this. We're going to come back in just a few minutes with the second half of our happy half hour show to complete the happy hour. And the second half, as we always do, we invite anybody who wants to be part of the live studio audience to participate in the questions. Our producer Mary is filling in that role very well because she's already part of the show, and she gets paid handsomely for that.
We just double every week. We double her what we pay her.
Cover her salary, right? Yeah, 2 times 0, 4 times 0, 8 times 0.
But if you want to be a part of that conversation, just go to chatmosa.com and click on the Happy Life Studios link there, and you can come right in and you can be a part of this.
And by the way, you don't have to start a new account. All you have to do is log in with any of the accounts that you already have.
Whatever you're watching.
Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. It won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. And just think of what Steve said earlier in the show. By giving away his energy, he was depleted, and yet he was full of a sense of purpose, of joy, of happiness, because what he did matters. What you do matters. You matter, people. You are matter, so therefore you do matter. We'll see you on the other side. Peace out.